All right, you asked for it, so here's the video about what happened with our Model X. If you have not watched our Cybertruck delivery video, you can watch it by clicking on the link up there. I'll put it down in the description. But as I mentioned in that video, we ended up buying this all-wheel drive Cybertruck, not the foundation model, because we ended up having issues with our Model X, several repeating issues, and Tesla agreed to buy it back. And we had to make that decision. Are we going to get a new Model X, or are we going to go with the Cybertruck? We discussed it and decided we're going to go with the Cybertruck. So this is just going to be a quick lowdown video. This is not going to be nearly as in-depth as a lot of the other videos out there. There's a guy named Sherwin here on YouTube who has a couple of experiences like this, and he goes really in-depth, so I'll try to link to some of his videos down below. So let's start with what was going on and how long was it in service for each of the things that was going on. Now, I real quick want to say, this is our experience. These were decisions we made. These were decisions Tesla made for our situation. It is no promise that they would do the same for you. It's no promise that you would make the same decisions we made if you had the same issues with your vehicle. I'm just putting it out there as one of the examples of the many different ways that things can be handled. And if you think our decisions that we made were stupid, that's completely fair. Part of what was very difficult with some of these decisions is because we really like the Model X. First off, I love the ultra red color, but the Model X is just, oh, it is an amazing road trip vehicle. It is just so comfortable. It's a very, very comfortable vehicle, very cool road trip vehicle. Nonetheless, here we go. So dates and length of service. So June 17th of 2024, it was in for just a 1-day service. And the issue with that one was we're having problems with the driver's side Falcon Wing door. Sometimes was operating correctly, sometimes it was not operating correctly. And what they ended up doing is they replaced the pinch sensor. In this case, it was like closing, but it was actually wearing on the paint where it was closing. Both on the door and on the frame, I guess you would say, on the vehicle. But they ended up replacing the pinch sensor and driver's side Falcon door adjustment is what they did. Come July 25th, we were still having issues with that door. When it would close, you could almost just hear the molding kind of crunch, like, man, this thing is closing too tight or something. This time it was in service for 10 days. They did a driver's side Falcon door heavy door adjustment, and passenger side Falcon door, they replaced the controller module and updated the firmware. The reason for that one was that other issue with it closing tight, that actually had been an issue for quite a while, even before we took it in June. So word of the wise, you'll find out later, if you're having an issue, take it in. Like, I personally am like, it's not that big of a deal. You know, it's primarily my wife's vehicle. She said it's not bothering her, so I didn't think to bring it in. If you do end up doing a buyback, you're gonna wish you had brought it in sooner. So this was the first time we took it in for, my wife was reporting that the passenger side Falcon Wing door randomly would not work. It wouldn't work from the app. It wouldn't work from the physical buttons. The manual release would still work, but it wouldn't work from the screen. There was no way other than the manual release to open the passenger side Falcon Wing door. And it was totally random. So that time for both of those issues, it was in for 10 days. Then we were still, even though they did the heavy door adjustment, even though they, on the driver's side, even though they did the stuff they did on the passenger side, we were still randomly having the passenger side not work. But I was just trying to figure out, like, what were you doing at that time? Is there any kind of commonality we can find when it stops working? And we could find nothing. It seemed very, very random. It wasn't right after a software update. It wasn't right before a software update. 2-button on the steering wheel reset did not fix it. On September 20th, we took it in again for the driver's side door, just that crunching sound, and it was rattling constantly. I didn't mention that before, but yes, not just a crunching sound, but it was rattling constantly. And then again, randomly, the passenger side door was not opening, starting to feel like that's kind of a safety issue. Thankfully, you got other doors you can get out, but like, you need your door to be able to open. That time it was in for 18 days for service. I do want to say, shout out to Tesla Grand Rapids. They were fantastic to work with. Honestly, I think these issues were bothering them just as much as they were me, just the frustration of not getting them fixed. I was able to get a loaner every single time, and I've just had a really positive experience working with them. I really enjoy working with them, so they are fantastic. That time it was in for 18 days of service. Again, that's September 20th of 2024. Driver's side Falcon door, they replaced the interior door panel, and they did another adjustment on it. The passenger side Falcon door, they replaced the door latch, the cinching actuator, not sure what that is, and the lower harness. And then really the straw that broke the camel's back is, again, October 10th. Same thing. driver's side door was still making the constant rattling. I mean, constant rattling. And the passenger side door was continued to randomly not work. And so we took it on October 10th. That time it was in for 23 days of service. Driver's side Falcon adjustment to the door, passenger side Falcon. They replaced the electromechanical module. Again, I don't know what this stuff is. I used to work on my cars when I was growing up, but these cars are way too fancy for me. So if you're adding those up, we ended up having the car in service, I believe, actually this isn't in my notes, so that's kind of stupid of me. I believe it was 50 some days over a 60-day period, or 40 some days over a 60-day period. I started looking into lemon law. I really didn't want to go that route. I looked into this buyback process, and I did watch Sherwin's video, so thank you, Sherwin, for that. I don't even know, we were probably 15 days into this final service, and I just said, guys, I really appreciate all you're doing, but at this point, I'd like to formally submit a buyback request. So those are the dates and lengths of service, and gives you an idea of what we were experiencing and why we made the buyback request. Okay, so as far as a buyback experience goes, October 15th, we requested a buyback via message to service. October 16th, they did reply that they were submitting the request to management. October 21st, hadn't heard anything. That was 5 days later. I hadn't heard anything, so I asked for an update. So the service advisor did call me, actually, and left me a voicemail. I was in a meeting, so he left a voicemail that they're still talking with management about submitting it. October 28th, so a week later, I asked for an update. October 29th, so the next day, service did reply that the request had been recorded and I should get a response within 30 calendar days. November 15th, so that'd be what, 17 days later, I got an email from the service manager notifying us that Tesla had reviewed the request and is offering to repurchase the vehicle from us, or purchase the vehicle from us, I should say. They needed some loan payoff info, proof of the ownership documentation, the registration, so they can compute the offer. November 18th, so 3 days later, I replied with all the requested ownership and loan documentation. November 25th, I emailed asking for what the typical process looked like and what kind of a time frame we could expect. I did not hear back as of November 29th, so 4 days later. So I emailed again asking for status update and time frame. I wanted to be sure that we would be able to do the full self-driving transfer. That was a perk that was being offered at that time, and I was unsure of whether you could do that with a buyback. And that whole thing, it requires still having your current vehicle. So in case you don't know, when they do run the full self-driving transfer promotion, every single time I've seen it, you have to still own your current vehicle when you get the new vehicle for it to be able to transfer over. We did that actually with the Model X when we purchased that, and we were planning to do this with the Cybertruck that we were purchasing as part of the Model X buyback. December 3rd, they did reply to me that I should have a buyback offer number that week. And December 5th, I did get the email with the buyback numbers. I'm not gonna share all the numbers here. This video is gonna be long enough. This is the part where I suggest you, if you are having issues, take it in, get your service scheduled, because there is a deduction for the mileage that is on the vehicle. The concept is similar to how you get IRS mileage reimbursement or can expense it when you're traveling for business. What they explained to me is, states have a thing for, when you're doing a buyback, here's the maximum amount of deduction you can do based on mileage. And that mileage is the mileage from when you purchased until you first reported the issue. So had we reported the issue sooner and actually taken it in for service sooner, we would have had a lower deduction. But because we had more miles on the vehicle when we actually took it in for service, we ended up getting a bigger deduction for the mileage. So again, don't just let it go because it's under warranty and we'll get around to it. That was kind of my thinking. That thinking is wrong, or at least wrong in the state of Michigan. December 7th, so that would be 2 days later, I replied that we accepted the offer and I asked for the next steps and timeframes. And that same day we ordered the Cybertruck. December 11th, I emailed asking for confirmation that our acceptance had been received. That was 4 days later. I hadn't heard anything. December 13th, I did receive confirmation of our acceptance, and I was advised that once the documents are ready, they will reach out to us and schedule the vehicle to be surrendered within 7 days. The vehicle must be surrendered free of any damage, aside from normal wear and tear type stuff, and free of any aftermarket modifications, wraps, tint, wheels, etc., and with 2 keys. I asked about the modifications thing because we did have front-end PPF on our Model X. To my pleasant surprise, they did reply, don't worry about front-end PPF. If it's clear, it wasn't a color change or anything, that's gonna be fine. Now, I don't know if that's for everybody, if it was just for us, I have no idea. But they said that was fine. Keep in mind with some of these time frames, this is the end of the quarter, end of the year. And if you're familiar with Tesla, that is a crazy busy time for them, so I'm sure some of these time frames were longer because of that. So December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, I emailed to check in again. December 26th, so the day after Christmas, the service manager did reply that they were just waiting on some paperwork from California. January 2nd, I checked in again because I hadn't heard anything. January 3rd, they replied that the final paperwork should arrive the next Monday, and we can schedule for any day after that. We ended up scheduling for that Thursday, which was January 9th, to turn it in. Now, in this time, the Cybertruck, we got kind of a delivery date that could have been before or after this whole turn-in. And again, you've got to have the new vehicle and the old vehicle at the same time for the full self-driving and transfer. The service side said that the advisor side will reach out to me, and they did. Connor, who I've worked with several times there, I know him, great guy, great team there. He reached out to me and he said, we'll get you taken care of. Short version of that story is they did. We got the Cybertruck several days before we did the buyback. I think we ended up picking up either Monday or Tuesday of that week that we did the buyback. I do want to point out though, the thing in the Tesla app that we agreed to, the agreement for the full self-driving transfer, I read that. And if you read that, it does say that buybacks do not qualify. I want to be very clear. So don't say that, you know, Mike's EV Garage said that, hey, I can do full self-driving transfer even though it's a buyback. I'm just telling you that was my experience, that they did end up doing the full self-driving transfer. But I'm telling you right now, if you read the agreement that you're agreeing to when you're doing the full self-driving transfer, in the app, it says buybacks do not qualify. So just be clear on that. January 9th, we turned it in, got there, had a nice chat with the service manager. We signed a few documents, handed over the key cards, and that was it. It was just as easy as getting a Tesla was to have them buy it back. As far as post-buyback process, getting the loan paid off and all that kind of stuff, we turned the car in on January 9th. Our credit union got payment January 23rd, and we got our payment January 28th. So that's all of it. Hopefully I covered everything that you would expect to be covered. If not, if you have questions and I feel I can answer them, or maybe there's a gap in what I described and you're like, hey, what about this? Please drop it in a comment down below. Hopefully you got some value out of this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. And I will tell you, if you are looking to get a Tesla of any kind, make sure you use an existing Tesla owner's referral code. I will put mine in the description down below. You don't have to use mine. That's totally up to you, but make sure you use one. If you've got a friend who's got a Tesla, you can ask them about theirs. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one.